Football Now. I'm Ron Burke, and now introducing the three wise men. With me in Philadelphia, Brian Baldinger. In our nation's capital, Doc Walker. And in Dallas, courtesy of Bodog Football, it is Tim Brown. Gentlemen, time to separate the haves from the have-nots. One berth remains in each conference. Let's open with the AFC playoff picture, show you who's in and who can be in after this final regular season weekend. Those that are in, you probably know all too well. The Patriots, of course, going for perfection. We'll get on that subject coming up. The Colts have the 2 seed. The Jags in the mix, the Steelers as well. The Chargers clinch the AFC West. Now, the teams on the verge of the playoffs, only one will get in. The Browns must beat the Niners and have the Titans lose to the Colts. The Titans are simply in if they get a win. The Titans taking on the Colts as we begin with Brian Baldinger here in Philadelphia. These are the two big games, Titans, Colts, 49ers, Browns. Tell me about the Titans and Colts here, because it's a big unknown, Baldy. In the final week, as it applies to some of these teams, you don't know what you're going to get from the Peyton Mannings or the Jim Sorges or whomever takes the field for these teams.
Well, I would imagine that Indianapolis is going to start Peyton to keep his streak alive of continuous starts 10 years in a row now. So I would think that would be in place, Ron. But I think then after that, I mean, I don't expect to see Bob Sanders out there. We know that defense isn't the same without him. I think Tennessee has always played Indianapolis very, very tough. They're in their division. They play them twice a year. They're built to go after them. These teams don't like each other. So I would expect Tennessee to give it their best shot, and I don't think they're going to see the best from Indianapolis in that game, and I wouldn't expect that. So, I mean, it would seem that Tennessee has everything to play for, and they're not going to see Indy at their best. But that doesn't mean that they're going to win the game.
Hey, Doc, you look at the situation here as it relates to the Cleveland Browns. Here they are hanging by their fingernails, hoping to get in, hoping Tennessee loses this game to Indianapolis, when all the Browns had to do last week was beat a Bengals team that has been lousy for much of this season. Was this a case, you think, with Cleveland last week of just not being ready, particularly at quarterback, for a big moment like that?
Well, I think they were ready. I think what happened, maybe the receivers had a little bit too much influence on the young quarterback. He started forcing the football. I mean, most of their ill-fated gestures took place in the red zone. I mean, they were about to score and just blew it. Been there. It's an empty feeling. I mean, that's the worst feeling you can have in this league. The second worst feeling is having to wait on someone to win to get in. Been there, done that. And when they lose, you're done.
Tim, when you look at the Titans here, of course, needing a win against the Colts and the Browns likewise against the Niners, describe for us what the motivation must be like for each of those teams. One, knowing that if it wins, it's definitely in. The other, knowing that even if it wins by 50 points, it still could be home for the holidays.
Yeah, it's no fun being the Cleveland Browns right now, that's for sure. When you had the opportunity to win, if you win out, you're in the playoffs, you have everything, the destiny in your hands, and you let it go, and now it's in the hands of somebody else. It's not a good thing. And as for the Titans, you know, I think they're in a situation that they were hoping to be in a couple weeks ago, that if they can win a football game here at the end of the year, they're going to be in the playoffs, you know. And funny enough, this Indianapolis Titans game sort of reminded me of what happened with the Dallas Mavericks down here with the Golden State Warriors. They had an opportunity at the end of the year last year to go and play Golden State and beat those guys and not get them, and they would have been out the playoffs. And Dallas chose to sit a lot of their players, and we all know what happened with the Dallas Mavericks. So this Tennessee team is not a team you want to mess around with. If I'm the coach, I don't know if I want to see these guys in the playoffs.
Yeah, you know, timing is so important here in these situations, too, because it's about losing at the right time, winning at the right time. And in this case, Baldy, the Chargers, for example, here's a team that going into this final weekend has won 8 of 10, has been impressive of late, but went through some lull periods this season where you wondered who are these Chargers going to be when all is said and done. It looks as though in terms of losing, they did it at the right time, because they look like a rejuvenated bunch right now with the string that they've had going.
Well, I think they have. Now, they've played some lackluster offenses along the way, and I think if you look at what's turned this team around right now, it's been defense. In the 5-game win streak that they have right now, they haven't given up more than 17 points in any of those 5 games. So you'd say, okay, what has turned this thing around? What has fueled it? To me, when you can keep the score down consistently like they have in this streak, and then you have the offensive firepower that you have with LT and Antonio Gates and Chris Chambers and the other parts that you have, I think it's a lot easier to start steamrolling and start stacking those wins together. So I would say defense right now is what you have to look at with San Diego.
All right, let's look at of course, the team that's going to dominate the discussion for the next couple of days here as we head into the final weekend. That is the New England Patriots, for obvious reasons. A team that's on the verge of becoming the first 16-0 regular season finisher in NFL history. And we just should give you a little backlog here on some of what the Patriots have been able to accomplish and what they're on the verge of doing here in terms of its prolific season so far. The first team, of course, at 15-0. They set the record for touchdowns. They're close to breaking the all-time scoring record. They should have that, maybe a couple of minutes into this game against the Giants. Brady has his individual numbers he's going for in regards to Peyton Manning. Randy Moss, of course, has his eyes set on the Jerry Rice record for touchdown receptions in the season at 22. And Doc, let me ask you this: the Giants are in a situation where they're locked for the playoffs. They're in the mix. The Patriots have worlds of motivation because of this perfect record they're trying to achieve. What do you expect we'll see in this game? Because it would behoove the Giants, I think, to not go out there and play like this is a game that they have to have because of their injury situation and the fact that they could have some uncertain positions come playoff time.
Well, against Buffalo, Tom Coughlin had to give the team mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to get them to wake up and play. And once they woke up, they played. And they're going to need that kind of carryover effect, in my opinion, to roll into the playoffs if they hope to be successful. The bad news for them is that when the Patriots start running the football like they're running now, Ronnie, they're going to be very difficult to beat because they've had balance. We haven't given them enough credit for it. But once they start steaming things up and pounding that ball, they're going to be very difficult to beat.
Tim, what do you think? The Patriots say all the right things, and give them credit because consistently from day one, they've said all the right things. They've handled this thing, I think, in a perfect manner in terms of not getting full of themselves in regards to a perfect season. But internally, they have to be thinking something differently than what they're actually telling us about finishing 16-0 and maybe 19-0 when it's all over.
Yeah, I would expect that you would hear this team talking about, hey, look, if we go 16-0, that's just a part of it. Our goal is to go 19-0. Our goal is to win a championship. If we lose this game this week, so what? I mean, we're here to win a championship. And I know they've won 3 Super Bowls over the last 6 years, and they've done a lot of different things. But for guys like Randy Moss and Wes Welker and Dante Stallworth, Junior Seau, guys who have not been in this situation before, I'm sure 16-0 doesn't mean anything to those guys. They want to put a ring on their finger. So I'm a little surprised to hear them even talking about the 16-0 thing, because to me, if you go 16-0 and lose in the playoffs, you're the biggest flop in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, great point.
Tim, what do you think the motivation is for the Giants right now? Should it be try to beat the Patriots and really have unbelievable momentum going into the playoffs? Nobody would have a bigger buzz. Or do you play that game where, you know what, we can't afford injury. Let's just concentrate on Tampa in 2 weeks. Down in Tampa in our playoff game. What do you think they should do?
No, I definitely think they should think about the playoffs. I mean, that's the point I was just making. Yeah. The regular season is for the postseason. So for the Giants, I'm saying, hey, look, hey, congratulations, you went 16-0. But we're going to get ready to play this game in Tampa because that's what it's all about. It's about the second season at this point.
Hey, but Tim, let me ask you, when you're not playing good football, your best football, in December, how do you rectify that? Because to me, there's several top-tier teams who've played mediocre football in December. So do you flick that switch on in the playoffs when you got young quarterbacks? I find that difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult to flip a switch for sure. But, at the same time, if you have an opportunity to rest, because, I mean, this is my experience, guys, and you guys played the game also, and you may have different experiences. But late in the year when you're playing a game that doesn't mean anything, it's impossible to go out there and be your best. I mean, especially when you're in a position that you solidified your place in the playoffs, you're going to have a bye, or you got to play a game the next week, and this game doesn't mean anything. It's impossible to really go out and play as hard as you would like to play in that game because you're thinking about the game that's really important to you. So that's been my experience. So I think it's going to be impossible to just say, okay, let's go out and play this game like it's a real game and like it really means something. I just don't think football players can do that and be successful at it.
Yeah, that's why we talk so much about motivation being important here as you win in December. That's going to wrap it up for Tim Brown on this week's program. Tim, thanks for joining us. Have a great new year. And if you'd like more from Tim, his insight and analysis on the pro game, check out what he has to say by visiting bodogfootball.net. Tim, we'll see you in 2008.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a safe new year.
Thank you very much. We're tackling the NFC